All right, AP Psychology, welcome back. Hopefully, you guys are doing well today. This is Thursday, March 26th. This is remote learning number 7, I do believe it is. Calling it remote learning now from the district. A couple other updates, if you will. You can see my bright, shining, smiling face right over here. Figured out some new things and actually ended up splurging and spending some money on the paid version of this screencast system. So now you can see me. Well, if that hurt your eyes, sorry. You can block that portion of the video if you want. But all right, back at it. Today we got social cognitive theory and the PowerPoint review of it to make sure you guys are good to go on. But it is March Madness round number 3. A reminder to have you guys go to, let me pull it up for you. Go to challenge.com. You can see we're at our round of 8. Milgram versus Zimbardo, Solomon Asch versus Sigmund Freud, Martin Seligman versus Piaget, Pavlov versus Erik Erikson. Those are all names that I'm sure are familiar to you. So go up here, vote. Let's see who wins out on that. We also do have those College Board review sessions going on. They are very good. They are being recorded, so you can go back and view them piecemeal, but I really encourage you to listen to them live, especially for the question and answer opportunities that are there. So please do that. Make sure you're downloading Zoom. It's coming up that we are going to get together probably after the spring break, if you will. But we're looking to get you guys together for especially the AP review content and the FRQ review content that is going to be important for you. And lastly, I did create a Quizlet for Corona 2019, if you will. So if you go to our classes Quizlet, it is the 2020 AP Psych Test Review. I think I even put COVID-19 on it just to make sure everyone knows what's going on. But that is available for you on our classes Quizlet. There was one student, Grant, who asked for that, and I think that was a fantastic idea. So it is available for you once again. Make sure you go once more, and I'll re-add it just to make sure it is there for everybody. Make sure you do go to Plainfield Central AP Psych, and it will be there for you. Bam, it's been reshared to it. So make sure you get on to that. It's a good review opportunity for everybody. All right, so today, as stated, our goal is to, in large part, cover social cognitive theory. As you guys saw from the reading yesterday, that it's not a difficult theory, it's straightforward, but it is an opportunity for us to make sure we understand social cognitive theory, or as sometimes psychologists call the behavioral theory of personality. So I'll go ahead and jump right into our material. Looks like this screen recorder does make things a little bit difficult in terms of lag, but that'll be okay. Honestly, it should be a one video lesson. It's pretty straightforward. So, social cognitive approach, as you guys had the opportunity to read, it is much more so of a behavioral approach to kind of how we are. It definitely goes against trait theory in the idea that trait theory says we're going to be stable in terms of personality traits throughout different situations and throughout time. Social cognitive theory says, no, we're a little bit different. So, specifically, social cognitive theory looks to take a look at how your conscious thoughts and emotions are going to indicate different personality factors and what can actually cause you to be different depending upon the situation. And as I said already, this is going to be specifically based on the principles of learning, like we talked about in chapter 6. So obviously Bandura, as you saw in the reading, he does make his way into this, and even some others like John Watson early on in his theory and his career, he even worked through some of that as well. So, quick, obviously, we talked about John Watson in terms of the roots of the social cognitive theory or the behavioral theory of personality. Obviously, Watson holds the belief that all human behavior is based upon learning. So he would have argued, and he did argue, the idea that all of our personality factors are specifically going to be behaviorally based. So we learn kind of who we are and what we are, especially from a very young age. So according to Watson, I would have looked at my father and as my model for my personality, and my father's and my personalities do merge. They're closely kind of connected in terms of the traits, but according to Watson, he would say that that's the only place it would have come from, right? B.F. Skinner jumps into the game as well. Obviously, remember B.F. Skinner with operant conditioning. So obviously, he believed in the operants in the conditioning themselves. Remember, the term operant means how the organism is operating on the environment to get things that it wants, and especially avoid punishments or avoid kind of negative things within the environment as well. Now, B.F. Skinner would have done something that he called functional analysis. on situations to try and really get an idea of what is causing personality traits to come out. He would look at kind of a list of behaviors. Let's say a kid in a classroom is acting up. But the B.F. Skinner might do a functional analysis of that student's behaviors and try and track when the outbursts occur. And if B.F. Skinner would have found that a student acts up only when the teacher is present, it's clear that the child is looking for the reinforcement of the behavior. He's looking for attention, and attention is actually reinforcing his negative behavior in that moment. And so when looking at that situation, we all remember that class clown in elementary school or middle school, and that person may be the same today, but they also might be a little bit different. And maybe what is happening, according to B.F. Skinner, is that in those moments, the child is craving that attention that he or she might be lacking in other areas. So because of that, in that moment, he acts differently or she acts differently in order to receive that reinforcement of just being, of just attention and connection. So maybe that might be going on. That, in large part, the roots of the theory, behavioral or social cognitive theory. Again, don't get confused. Our textbook calls this social cognitive theory. Some other psychologists will call this behavioral theory. It's pretty straightforward. So now we get into Julian Rotter. Okay, according to Julian Rotter, who was a behaviorist, he believed that learning is actually going to create expectancies that are going to guide our behavior. Right? And expectancy is kind of like what I expect to happen or what I expect out of my behaviors to occur and change out of the environment that I'm around. He believed that we are going to make decisions that are going to be based upon what a person is going to expect to happen after the person does the behavior. So if they answer a question in class, what does a person expect to happen, right? And also the important factor here for Julian Rotter is the value that the person places on the outcome. So again, in a classroom, especially in kind of early high school ages, right, people place a lot of value on the outcome of after answering a question, right? And if a teacher is a jerk, to put it bluntly, if they're not nice and they respond to your question or to your answer to a question negatively because you got it wrong or whatever, then that is going to create a learned process, and that child might not raise their hand ever again because they don't want that same factor go on. They might be incredibly outgoing in other situations, but in classrooms they say, no, I'm not talking. I learned from that situation that happened before. What is critical here is the idea of the expectancies, right? The expectancies are what guides behavior. Now he furthered this in to this look at what he calls internals versus externals, right? He believed that as we go through life, we are going to kind of accumulate all of these situations and responses to situations based upon how I act. So if I engage in a behavior, I'm going to track and figure out what happens because of that behavior constantly. And I'm kind of doing like a almost mathematical equation in my mind to see what the bulk of the good things that have come from my behaviors are and what the bulk of the bad things that have come from my situations are. What he believed, what happens is people start to become, because of those experiences, people become either internals or externals. Internals are people who believe that their outcomes are going to be based upon their own efforts, right? They are individuals who believe that kind of what happens is because of what they did and then with how they worked or didn't work. Externals are people that are very different. They're actually people who believe that outcomes are beyond their control, that they don't have much opportunity to have an impact on what goes on. Now, it is at this time normally that I give a locus of control survey. A locus of control is specifically the idea of where your control in situations actually lies. Unfortunately, it doesn't work kind of doing this remote learning type of thing. It doesn't fit, and it won't fit. But what I normally see and almost always see is almost every student in an AP class has what is called an internal locus of control. Most people who are in AP classes believe that, they work hard and they're going to do well. And if they don't do well, even though they worked hard, they didn't work hard enough. It is in large part them and themselves who kind of control the reality of the situation. Now, there are people who, though, are externals, according to Julian Rotter. Their locus of control is external. And those are the people who believe that, even if I study really hard, I'm not gonna pass. So why does it even matter? I'm just gonna have bad luck, or the society is rigged against me, or I'll never win because everybody else is bigger and better than I am, or whatever it might be. Right? Those are people who are externals. Right? The difference between internals and externals is the heart of Julian Rotter's expectancy theory. He believes that people are going to kind of create this mindset and locus of control in order to deal with the situations that are in front of them. And how you deal with them and how you respond to them in large part is going to indicate whether you are an internal and have an internal locus of control, or if you're an external, you have an external locus of control. So what you see there at the bottom, and I think we can have a real deal application here to our world today. In the face of a natural disaster or a global pandemic, internals are the ones who are more likely to buy bottles of water or things that might be in need, toilet paper, than externals are. That's what you tend to see. Again, the idea is that, hey, I'm in control of my own of the outcomes. I need to do something behaviorally to make sure we're good. And so buying enormous amounts of toilet paper, perhaps. Not to make light of a bad situation. Okay, now we get to Albert Bandura. And truly, Albert Bandura, for the behavioral theories of personality or social cognitive theories of personality, this guy is the heart of it. And if you remember, we've talked about Bandura already. He was the individual who did put out the idea of social learning, Bobadal experiment, very important, right? Now, he does take on personality as well. He believed that personality is shaped by the ways in which thoughts, behaviors, and the environment are going to interact and influence one another. He called this theory reciprocal determinism. Now, this is really important. It seems like it's hard, but it isn't. Reciprocal determinism simply states that three things are going to impact to create your personality in any one situation. Your behavior, whatever you do, is going to influence the external environment. Your behavior will also influence your own personal factors, your own thoughts, your feelings, sometimes biological events. But the thing is, these things all interact together. So let's say you're the environment you're in, the external environment, right? Let's say you're in a room that's really hot, okay? The room that's really hot could influence your behaviors, maybe to kind of do something to cool off, but it could also impact your personal factors. Sometimes when you feel really warm, like you don't like it, then you get a little kind of aggressive and angry. You don't really like that. And so that is going to impact your behaviors. That is then going to impact the environment as well. And all these three things can combine to create you to be a kind of an angry, aggressive person, even though you might not be, based simply on the situation. What is the important factor here in reciprocal determinism, a term that seems hard but it's really not, is just the idea that behaviors, your environment, and your personal factors, how you feel about something, could interact together to make your behavior and personality a little bit different than normal, right? That is, once again, the reciprocal determinism theory from Albert Bandura. Three things. Those three things are going to combine and work together to change your behavioral traits depending upon the situation and what's going on. So obviously within this it flies in the face of trait theory. This idea of these three things going together, that doesn't fit with trait theory at all. Now, something else that Albert Bandura put out there, especially connected to reciprocal determinism, is this idea of self-efficacy. Now, for those of you who have been looking at that AP exam review that I put on the Schoology folder, you can see self-efficacy pops up a couple of times in FRQ questions that the AP College Board has put out there in the past. Self-efficacy is an idea of a learned expectation of success. Okay? We learn as we go through our lives, whenever we take on tasks, how effective we believe we can be. Right? There are some people who look at a task, a new assignment, a new project, whatever, and they say, wow, I'm going to crash and burn. Those people would have a low self-efficacy. If a person looks at a situation like remote learning, like all of you have been, and say, hey, I can handle this, I can do this, it's in large part because of the fact that you have taken on tasks in the past before and you've been able to be successful. Maybe you kind of took one on the chin and it didn't work out all that well in the past for some things, but more often than not, you've been able to do very well. That is an individual, you are individuals then with high self-efficacy, right? What we need to realize is, according to Bandura, self-efficacy might interact with your expected outcomes and it might change your behavior a little bit, right? But once again, self-efficacy, learned expectation of success. Get that from learning about how you've been able to deal with situations before and in the past. So, looks like I am running out of time. I do need to get to Walter Mischel's cognitive affective theory, and so I'll go ahead and stop this video, upload, and we'll start up our second video here shortly.